Hello and welcome back to the Park Life Sport podcast, with the first round of the FA Cup growing ever closer and the third round qualifying of the men's competition handing us an upset in Gloucestershire, as well as the women's competition giving us plenty of goals. I'm joined here with Lawrence Stanley. Laws, how are you doing?
Very well, Ben, thank you.
And I understand you were at an FA Cup game this weekend?
Yeah, I was at the New Meadow Lane to see Gloucester City. Like you say, it was a bit of an upset against Merthyr Town, losing 1-0, last-minute heartbreak. But to be honest, they looked like the side that were the lower division. Merthyr Town play in the Southern League Premier Division South, which is the 7th tier of English football, and obviously, as we know, Gloucester City in the National League North. But Merthyr were the better team. They created more chances. Obviously, Gloucester City playing with Stephen King, the new manager in charge. First game for him after the sacking of Lee Mansell just a few days prior. And I think that showed. With the performance. These are players who haven't had much to work with on the training ground. He obviously hasn't had a lot of time to work with them yet. But it wasn't the best start for King.
A Stephen King horror, as I suppose
you would say.
say.
You could say that. Yeah, there are plenty of jokes to be made. I'm sure we'll manage to squeeze a few in as the season goes on, if they continue to struggle.
Yeah, it didn't sound like it was a page turner in the slightest, but we will get on to that. We're going to go right back to the start of the FA Cup, where Bishop's Cleeve kicked off at least 3 minutes early to deliberately be the first round, the first tie of this year's competition, as they faced the mighty Wantage Town at Kate Lane on Friday. I was at this game with fellow reporters Matt Daly and Cam Wiper as they romped to a victory 4-1. Elsewhere in Gloucestershire, Cinderford beat Bitton 3-1, while Chipping Sodbury were the victors of the same scoreline at Thornbury. University of Gloucestershire Women's Football's head coach Tom Deacon saw his Slimbridge side progress courtesy of a 2-1 win at Tuffley, while Brimscombe and Thrupp, who we watched last season, overcame Fairford. Long Levens earned a famous tie against Gloucester City last season, but they lost to Aylesbury Vale Dynamos this time, and Cheltenham Town scholar Ben Hoy played the full 90 minutes as his lone club Ardley United beat Wokingham and Enbrook.
How many Gloucestershire sides would you expect to qualify from each round?
I'd say you want 3 or 4 from the first qualifying. If you have a look at it, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, at least 8 from this season. Some of them may not have qualified. Saracens are at the level where you have to finish a certain place, so you'd want a few, but today's FA Cup draw doesn't contain a single Gloucestershire side.
That is a shame.
But we will get on to that.
See, I didn't even know they did an extra preliminary round before the preliminary round.
Are you able to tell me how many rounds there are in the FA Cup?
I mean, I did see the piece of paper before, so I'm afraid I couldn't give you a valid answer.
It is 14. It is
quite the slog.
Quite the competition, Loz. Now, moving on to the preliminary round. Would you like to take us through it?
Well, yeah, you mentioned Cinderford there, who beat Bitton in the extra preliminary round. They took on Chipping Sodbury. Chipping Sodbury, excuse me. They won 5-0. Your local team, Bishop's Cleeve, is actually could we say it was a derby? Against Brimscombe,
a very vague derby.
They came out on top 2-0. Aylesbury beating Ardley 1-0, and Flockwell Heath losing to Slimbridge 1-0.
So the Gloucestershire teams carrying on, and we got a couple more in the next round as well.
Oh yeah, moving on to the first qualifying round. Unfortunately, Cinderford falling to a 3-2 defeat to Loverstock and Ford. Is that Cirencester?
Yep. Cheltenham Town scholar Adlai Sambu is on loan at Cirencester. His team beat Larkhall 2-0. Cleeve continued their winning run with a 3-1 victory over Westbury, while Yate entered the competition. Yate, of course, reached the first round in 2012, where they lost to Cheltenham Town. And can you tell me what they were part of last season? The first ever meeting between two sides that did what?
I'm stumped, I'm afraid.
Two sides beginning with Y.
Oh, really?
In the 150-year history, Yate against Yeovil was the first time two teams beginning with Y met.
Well, I suppose that, there aren't any other teams that I know of that start with a Y.
Can we brainstorm some teams beginning with Y?
Maybe we should do that after.
You know what? I'll give it a quick Google.
Well, while you do that, I'll move on to the second qualifying round. Unfortunately for your lot, Bishop's Cleeve, they lost on penalties.
Incredibly interesting. Obviously, we were 3-1 down. I say we. They were 3-1 down in the 90th minute. They missed a penalty. Helston had a game. They had a man sent off. Cleeve got another one back. I heard a commentator next to me for Helston going, "We are seconds away from an historic moment for Helston Football Club." And then bang, 3-3 takes it to a replay, which Cleeve lost.
Well, that is a shame. But as for Gloucester City, though, they beat Hungerford Town 3-1 away from home. Very good performance there. That was back when Lee Mansell was still in charge, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And Yate, we talked about their dream run to the first round. They continued their push towards the first round proper with a 2-1 win against Tiverton. And, what's this last one here?
Merthyr Town against Cirencester.
Oh, yeah, we'll get on to them. So what's that? That's
so
2 teams left.
Adlai Sambu, the main man at Cirencester, took that game to a replay. Merthyr did win that replay, but I've only found one other team in the professional-ish environment to begin with Y, and I'm actually kind of surprised that they wouldn't have played Yeovil or Yate in the FA Cup. Got any guesses? National League, I think.
I mean, sorry, what was that?
There is another team around Yeovil and Yate in that sort of area. They've been professional, they've been in League 2.
I don't even know where Yeovil is.
Somerset. Okay, it's York City. We can move on.
Okay.
Let's talk about your game yesterday, where former Cheltenham Town scholar Tom Hanley started for Merthyr Town. It's an historic win for them.
I have to say, yeah, they brought a lot of fans. You could tell it was a big occasion for them. They were certainly there in their numbers. It wasn't a great game, but it was just that one moment of magic, if you will. It was Lewis Powell who...
Would you say it was magic? It looked a bit more tragic from the highlights.
Well, I mean, he did well to shield the defender, and then he just managed to finish it low in the bottom left-hand corner past the goalkeeper. It was a bit of a scrappy game. I mean, both sides hit the woodwork, but yeah, I think it's disappointing for Gloucester City. They would have fancied their chances in that one.
So you're saying that performance just wasn't it?
I would say so, yeah. How many more we got left?
I don't know. There's probably more, but we'll move on.
We should say it's
we'll stop clowning around. It's fine.
It's Stephen. No, but Stephen King, the author, is with a PH, isn't it, rather than a V? So unfortunately,
that ruins the fun.
Yeah, but let's just pretend that it is. I mean, it's a Stephen King, so we'll take it.
And Yate did lose 3-0 to Bracknell, the end of their dream. I was at Yate the other week, and I heard one of the injured players say that his dream tie would be Swansea City.
I mean, is he a Swansea fan?
He did have a Welsh accent, so he must have been. Moving on to the women's side of the competition, they've only had the 2 qualifying rounds. They don't do the preliminaries. Well, we had an El Glossico of sorts as Gloucester City faced Bishop's Cleeve. Now, Bishop's Cleeve's manager I used to play under, a man called Chris Goff. He said, even though we're in the same league and we've beaten them before, it's still kind of a David against Goliath tie. You compare the men's teams, it would certainly be penned as that.
Yeah, well, we've also got Longwell Green losing 10-0 to Penmill, which is fair to say it's a bit embarrassing.
It's not the best, especially when you look at Penmill in the next round. St Vallier 1, Pucklechurch 1. Of course, they don't do replays or extra time in the Women's Cup. They just go straight to penalties.
Do you think they should do that in the men's game?
Straight to penalties?
Yeah.
I think I'd prefer that, in all honesty.
I mean, I don't think many... the impression I got on Saturday was that a lot of people didn't want to have to go to Merthyr for the replay.
It's not just football fans, though, is it?
Yeah. Especially at this level.
And Frampton drew 2-2 with Oldland Abertonians before a 6-5 win on penalties for Frampton. And we move into the second qualifying round, where former Cheltenham Town players Paris Dollaway and Holly Rogers were on the winning side for Worcester City in an 8-1 thumping of City of Stoke.
Well, you had a few things to say about the pitch there, didn't you? It was an interesting pitch.
I had to get my protractor out at one point because you talk about angles in games. You really don't expect one of those angles to be 45 degrees with a pond at the bottom. and to get to
Right.
the toilets, you had to go up a hill. So it was interesting. But Frampton and Chipping Sodbury met, abandoned. I couldn't find anything about that. AEK Bocco got their revenge on Bishop's Cleeve with a 3-0 win. It was Cleeve that knocked Bocco out of the FA Youth Cup midweek.
It sounds like an exotic name for a lower league club. It
From
sounds
Bristol.
I mean, it sounds like, well, the Boca Juniors really.
Or AIK Athens.
Yeah.
Next up, we have a University of Gloucestershire connection as LE Carrington Windows toughly side lost 2-0 to Poulton Rovers, while Penn Mill lost 5-1 to Pucklechurch. Really didn't follow on from that 10-0 win. Forest Green Rovers got a game at the New Lawn, plenty of Cheltenham Town's alumni in there, beating Western Supermare 8-0, who Bishop's Cleeve would have played in the men's competition had they not lost to Helston.
Missed out there.
They really
Missed
did.
out on a dream tie.
And obviously, Chippenham, I say obviously, no one's going to know this, Chippenham got a walkover over Downend Flyers.
Do we know why?
Downend just couldn't apparently field a team, which is somewhat of an issue in the Gloucestershire County Leagues, having worked in there before. It's not taken too seriously, or at least it wasn't by the time at the FA, which did make it a bit annoying. But Loz, you one of these FA Cup purists?
I mean, it's the oldest competition in the world, isn't it?
Some say it's the best, with how you could have a non-league team go all the way to Wembley.
I know, 14 rounds. I mean, you talk about, I mean, you've been to some of these pitches, these stadiums, where it starts. I mean, that's what it's all about, really. I mean, without that, then the FA Cup would not be, it would just be another cup competition. It'd be like the League Cup if you didn't have stories like that and these qualifying rounds. So, yeah, I think it's great that we can spread the word about these lower league sides and talk about how the battle to get just to the first round as well, to play, even though it would be a League One and League Two club. It's not obviously a Premier League. It's not a Man United, a Liverpool, but for them it's everything. So I think it's great to see that the FA Cup, in my opinion, is still alive and kicking.
And yeah, of course, Cheltenham Town and Forest Green Rovers will enter the FA Cup at the first round stage. Unfortunately, no Gloucestershire derbies incoming unless we do get each other, which wouldn't be the best. But I love the FA Cup for the fact that you could have your tiler. You'll be working on your bathroom on the Friday, play in the FA Cup on TV on the Saturday, be back Monday to finish the job.
That is what it's all about.
But yeah, I don't want to keep you too long, Loz. I know you've got your own work to do. I'd quite like some lunch. Thank you all from Park Life. I've been Ben Ware. This is Lawrence Stanley. Thank you and goodbye.
Goodbye.